This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. To learn more or to subscribe, visit beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew. Craft Beer and Brewing Podcast. I'm Jamie Bogner for today's episode. I'm just outside of Bend, Oregon at a little town called Sunriver. And of course, the brewery that I'm here to visit today is Sunriver Brewing. Joining me is Patrick Raasch, head brewer. Welcome back, Patrick. We have had you on as a panel discussion for a panel discussion earlier on in the podcast history. But this is all about Sunriver.
That's super awesome. Super excited you made the trip down here in a beautiful Central Oregon, bluebird, sunny, mid-80s day.
It is incredible. I drove out from Portland this morning, and I'll tell you, this generation of modern West Coast IPA feels like this drive from Portland into Bend, where you start in this kind of lush green, kind of environment. And then, you get these like high peaks, as you center. And then before you know it, you start like creeping out of the forest, and all of a sudden it's just dry, high desert.
Yep.
And it finishes crisply, despite this kind of lush start. And so I've been working on this metaphor for the entire drive, and I'm rolling it out for you here.
I think it works perfect. Yeah. From some pine resin to, like you said, nice, bright, bluebird, dry kind of day.
It's gorgeous. And, Mount Hood is gorgeous. The mountains down here, Bachelor, the Sisters, all that. Just a stunning landscape. And, obviously this Bend, Sunriver kind of area out here is a hotbed for beer and for brewing. And, it's produced some amazing brewers and, some incredible, the number of different breweries that have all been like perennial medal winners at all the major competitions is, it's something. And you guys are way up there in that list. 9 GABF medals, 10 World Beer Cup medals, lots and lots of them gold, across those. And, the styles, everything from hoppy beers, wheat beers, coffee stout and porter. With us last year, your bourbon barrel-aged American barley wine rated 100 with our blind judges. You won Alpha King. You won Alpha King last year.
Yeah, that was super exciting. Definitely something Brett's been chasing, our director, and myself since 2017, and had some runner-ups along the way, and to hear that kind of double whammies beer name called was super exciting. You were in the room as well, and obviously Cloud9, and I think we're almost finally getting a display case put up for it, so I think it's going to be a fun rotating display with probably some blue or green backlights. I think we're trying to have some fun with it, make it look like the old, Hall of Fame, where you go into Michael Jackson's whatever Thriller kind of suit as well. So have some fun with it. I think the people out here are going to be pretty excited to see.
That crown is awesome. It's quite the thing. So, but yeah, with us, let's see, 8 beers that have scored 95 and above. And if anyone's actually tracking that back, there's one that we haven't published yet because your forthcoming Sounds of Summer from our new lager issue. I was writing my editor review of it the other day, 2 days ago, in fact. And, it's one of the best beers that I've had this year. Definitely in my top 10 for the year. A rice lager with some interesting botanical ingredients and whatnot. And, so it doesn't matter what the style of beer is. You all are absolutely, just have this kind of creative and technical, piece on lock, making beers that perform well, but also that express flavor with a kind of both exuberance and refinement that is just exceptional and hard to find. So somehow through the course of this podcast, we are going to talk about that both in the hoppy beer realm and in some of the other flavored beer realms, because I'm here and we're just going to have to get into it. And but what you're doing is special, and I can't wait to talk about it. Before we dive into today's episode, a quick word for the brewers out there staring down a broken chiller. You know the pain Warm fermenters, stressed yeast, and that sinking feeling when the repair quote lands in your inbox. With refrigerant regulations changing and the cost of obsolete refrigerants skyrocketing, sometimes the fix costs more than the unit's worth. G&D Chillers is there to help whether you're a small brew pub or a large, full-scale production brewery. Don't throw good money at bad equipment. Invest in a solution that grows with your brewery and keeps your tanks cold when it counts. Big thanks to G&D Chillers for supporting this podcast since 2019. Reach out to them at gdchillers.com/podcast to learn how they can support these next years of your brewery's growth. And it's here. Berkeley's FRESH Chico is now available dry. You've heard here on the podcast just how many medal-winning brewers used FRESH Chico as their house strain because of how clean and versatile it is. If you want to make world-class IPA, your fermentation must avoid unwanted or distracting flavors. And Berkeley's robust low-diacetyl technology is a game changer with healthy and highly viable cells that ferment fast and clean every time. Bringing that level of fermentation innovation to dried yeast is no small feat, but the experts at Berkeley Yeast love making the impossible possible. With bricks priced as low as $88, that's a cost-effective solution, and you'll save even more by eliminating ALDC from your brews. Head over to berkeleyyeast.com and start leveling up your IPA today. Also, this episode is sponsored by PakTech, delivering craft beer multi-packing you can trust. PakTech's handles are made from 100% recycled plastic and are fully recyclable, helping breweries close the loop and advance the circular economy. With a minimalist design, durable functionality you can rely on, and custom color matching, PakTech helps brands stand out while staying sustainable. Trusted by craft brewers nationwide, they offer a smarter, sustainable way to carry your beer. To learn more, visit paktech-opi.com. That's paktech-opi.com. All right, Patrick, what's your story? Tell me your story, and then tell me the Sunriver story.
All righty. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm just a Midwest kid, so I grew up outside of Kansas City, and then went to University of Kansas. It was kind of there that, I started really kind of getting an understanding of craft beer. My father homebrewed kind of growing up and helped him, and got into college and realized, there was his old 15-gallon kegel system sitting in the garage collecting dust. So I was like, heck, let's rip out the washer and dryer in our apartment and let's make a brewery. So I started that, and then I was bar managing at a tap house in downtown Lawrence, and kind of like the glory days of beer dinners and food pairings, and it was just a ton of fun. So I bar managed there, and this was kind of early 2000s. So bringing in, your Averys, your Odells, had Bear Republics, kind of flying in a lot of the brewmasters owners and stuff, and kind of did these beer dinners and pairings. And from there, I was like, this seems like a really awesome industry, and kind of hit the ground running. So from there, graduated my undergrad and was lucky enough to get hired on at Free State Brewing Company, OG kind of brewery in Kansas, and got my boots wet there. Kind of just slowly made my way through the different departments there, and was able to attend Siebel Institute to get some more advanced kind of brewing science degree. And from there, I love the Midwest, but was ready to kind of, I think, spread my wings and get out of the Kansas City area. And I mean, it was Big Brother up north that kind of brought me out here to Deschutes. Remember kind of getting Fresh Squeeze and a lot of their products when they kind of launched in the Midwest, and it was just eye-opening, just kind of a different way of kind of building beers than I was used to from the Boulevards and your Odells and all that out there, and kind of just had my eye on Bend, Oregon for a long time, and was waiting for the right opportunity. And Sunriver came along and had a lead brewer position at the time. We were pretty tiny back then, back in 2016, and essentially said, hey, I'm packing my bags, and got the opportunity to be hired on, and kind of haven't looked back since.
So tell me about Sunriver then. You started and it was pretty small, and it's still kind of, you have two sides. You have the pub side, and you do have multiple locations and, with pubs, but then you also have a production side.
Correct. Yeah. So when I came in 2016, we were making maybe 2,100 barrels or so. We're kind of teetering right around 13,000 barrels now. So throughout the last 10 years, each year we kind of grew about 2,000 barrels and opened another pub, kind of that direct to consumer. We had a fantastic operator that was had a lot of background in restaurant industry, so understood the opportunities with having some of these public house locations that we can kind of get our beer.
That's how Deschutes got their start.
Correct. Yeah. And so we just kind of like strategic growth throughout the last, 10 years. And from there, we've kind of hit max capacity right around that 13,000 and kind of happy where we're at, not looking really to expand or do anything crazy. I think it's just a nice number for us to supply our pubs and have a decent kind of chain placements in Oregon, but not really looking to get crazy outside the state and open up that other chapter or next chapter as well. And I think just kind of maintain and enjoy what we got and kind of just stick with it.
Tell people about the system you've got back there, because you are cranking out like 6 turns a day on this system. To kind of you're definitely pushing the production ceiling on the brew house that you have here in the cellar.
Yeah, it was fun. At the time we didn't know what we were going to expand and grow into. So it's a 4-vessel JV Northwest system, 15 barrel. But a handful of years ago, we kind of were looking at brew turns and timing and converted that mash mixer into a wort receiver since it's jacketed with steam. So every other turn we kind of can run off into that, and that allows us to really streamline our hot side production with kind of lights on at 5 a.m. and lights off at about 9 p.m. and can turn through about 25 turns a week, give or take. That allows us to kind of then remove a lot of that weekend coverage and have a lean crew to kind of keep everybody on like a nice 410 schedule.
Because during the winter, you guys got to get out there and ski, and then in the summertime, everyone's going to be hiking and biking because, this is the country. This is where you are.
Yeah, everybody loves that. Having 3 days off, same thing. They can kind of have one non-busy kind of peak tourist area where they can kind of hit the trails when it's not crazily packed or hit the ski hills as well. And yeah, just everybody loves it. So works out well.
Sure. So, as you started, obviously there were some core brands that existed there that that have then developed over the years. And then of course there's a specialty beer program that has developed, alongside that. And so I want to talk about, the nature of those kinds of, cores, because, the beer world has changed over the last, 10, 12 years. And yet, you find ways to subtly massage and modernize without, dramatically or drastically. Some people might say that some of them are drastic, but only drastic if looked back on the breadth of that history, year to year, maybe not so drastic. While at the same time, clearly you all are at the very forefront of, a lot of these modern iterations of style like West Coast IPA. If you're winning Alpha King, like you have to be, you are by definition right there on the front edge. So I want to talk about how some of that kind of interesting push and pull between modernizing some of these classic styles, and then and then how that reflects in what that pure expression of modernity is. Before we do that, Oregon hop country is heaven to world-class lager varieties, and Indie Hops is proud to have introduced Oregon's newest lager hop, Lorien, in 2022. Lorien is in a growing list of beers that have found their way to the podium, and more importantly, into the hearts of lager lovers across the country. Discover Indie Hops Lorien. Side effects may include rampant festivity, sales bumps, and exceeded expectations. Indie Hops, life is short. Let's make it flavorful. And if you're like many podcast listeners, you've got a lot of beers at home and your regular fridge is at capacity, enter the Midea 50/50 Flex, the industry's first dual compartment 3-way convertible freezer. Here's what all of that means for you options. The 50/50 has the power to be all freezer, all fridge, or a little bit of both, but you'll probably want to use those 20 cubic feet as a massive garage-ready beer fridge. You can also change which side the door is on or how you want the shelves to be arranged. The 50/50 totally flexes to fit your life. Plus, it's designed to maintain a stable temperature even in non-climate controlled conditions, so you can crack a cold one even on the warmest days in the man cave. Take your garage to the next level. Check out midea.com/US to get more info about this game changer today. So tell me, let's talk maybe about Vicious Mosquito. That's that's kind of like your classic core IPA. It's American IPA. It's been around for a long time. It's out there, in the production lineup. There's expectations around it. When you came in 2016, how would you describe that beer? What did it look like? And describe to me some of the, because none of your consumers are going to listen to this. We don't want to like ruin all your secrets with all of them, but at the same time, to make things stay the same, they have to change, right? That, consumers' context is constantly changing, what they're eating, what they're drinking, not just in the beer and alcohol space, but, the coffee that they're drinking, the, fast casual restaurants that they go to, love their spice tolerance. All of these things are just, always in motion. And so, if things don't move in that kind of direction, then they feel old pretty quickly. So even having them kind of sit in that classic pocket means you have to find subtle ways to update them so that they stay in that kind of, perceived in that classic pocket. Where were you, and where do you find yourself now?
Yeah, I mean, that beer has, I wouldn't say gone through some drastic overhaul, but it's kind of year over year. We just kind of see what's out in the market and where our internal palates want to take it. But also, we don't want to alienate some of our core Vicious Mosquito drinkers. So, I mean, back then it was a large charge of Centennial and Cascade, some smaller charges with some OG Columbus, and a little bit smaller load of Simcoe. And then throughout the last 10 years, the Cascades dropped out of there. The Centennial was kind of lowered. The Columbus has got more, into Columbus Cryo and some of these early harvests. And our Simcoe, we select way more of kind of your tropical stone fruit flavors as well. So just slowly modernizing it, but also, like I said, not alienate some of our core customers that have been drinking that thing for over a decade now. But I think strategic evolution is important. Same thing with the malt side, a little bit more dextrose to dry it out. Did have Crystal 15 in it. It's now at Crystal 10. It's actually had a conversation with our director of brewing ops today about, what does 2027 Vicious Mosquito look like? And I think that's also dropping a little bit of that crystal malt out and maybe layering in another one of these less classical, more newer world hops into it to kind of evolve it a little bit, but still keep it true to Vicious Mosquito drinkers.
That's the game, and it's a subtle, long process, but it is an evolutionary process at the same time, and in that sense, like, I mean, how do you define that internally? Is that an American IPA for you? Is that a West Coast IPA? Is that a, Oregon style IPA? Yeah.
I mean, I think if Oregon style IPA would kind of resonate with a lot of the consumers, definitely I think hits that, but I think we definitely keep it more in that American IPA realm. I think kind of just that pine and the citrus resin backbone with a little bit of malt and kind of those BUs being a little bit higher. But I think the evolution of American IPA is changes year over year as well, and we're also trying to evolve and change as that kind of starts to morph into what 2027 American IPA looks like.
How do you think about those things? And I have some ideas. Obviously, I found even in in judging at Alpha King and sitting there on the final table last number of years that we generally get beers that fall into two different kinds of categories. One being this classic, like saturated, oily citrus and pine, where there are these, and obviously that competition is built around, higher IBU bitter beers. But, so in this sense, like they, the beers that tend to be there at the final table just have this incredible saturation to them of these classic flavors. Obviously this kind of round, cohesive approach to it. And then there's also this more thiol, sulfur-driven, modern IPA, maybe a little bit New Zealandy, but not necessarily. Can't even call it New Zealand because, again, Mosaic and Citra have a lot of those same thiols, and you can use them in the same kind of way. And so, in that sense, like there are some clearly defined buckets, and it's not that and you look at the winners in any given year, and it's usually some blend of both of those that it's usually distributed in some way, but between these different takes, because it's not that one's better, that one take isn't better than the other. They're both great. It's just how well they're executed in each of those. And so for you, how do you all kind of build that that kind of distinction, because you do make things that you call West Coast that are definitely a little more lean, a little more like punchy and whatnot. But what is that? Do you have any kind of guidelines that you all use for that?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of definitely starts with the malt bill for sure. Our American style IPAs, what we call them. We have bulk based 2-row that's in them. And then from there, typically we still layer in a little bit of crystal malt. I think that's kind of evolving a little bit as well. I think that base 2-row that we have has enough complexity.
What's the base 2-row that you use?
Great Western.
Okay.
And so I think that has enough, and just, getting some dextra pills or some carafoam and something to kind of have this nice, residual mouthfeel and not sweet, but have a backbone breadiness that helps hold up to, I think, some of that higher bitterness, and definitely more of that pine resin and that bright kind of, not pithy citrus, but kind of more of that lingering bitterness that kind of holds on your palate a bit more than some of these West Coasts that kind of have a bit smoother overall. It doesn't maybe have quite that scrubbing bubbles tingle on your palate as much as American IPAs. So we'll kind of start with the
Is there an IBU difference between those two?
Typically so. We try to keep our West Coast probably a little bit higher bitterness than maybe a handful of people, but typically we're about 10 IBUs higher on American than West Coasts. Just to kind of help cut through that malt sweetness for sure. I think it adds this balance. I think it brings that drinkability where it's just not long on the tooth and sweet liquid bread kind of on the back end. So yeah, kind of 2-row base, have some of that, little bit of crystal malt. Typically then we kind of look at our what hops are we putting in there. Typically it's, I wouldn't say old school, but definitely more your classic citrus forward, a little bit more stone fruit, definitely pine resin, and some of those American IPAs, but also, as it's evolving, layering in some of these newer products and some of these newer hop varieties to help balance it out. I think the potpourri pine resin IPAs of the early 2000s are kind of, maybe a little bit lost in the past for sure, but I think you kind of have to have a balance between some of what classic American IPA is and what I think we consider American IPA these days.
I've been hearing more of that even on this trip, of folks, creeping in smaller amounts of, say, New Zealand hops or more thiol heavy hops, not in big ways, but in smaller percentages that just, they're just starting to add structure that way rather than just some of, adding more bitterness through some of these classic hops that they might have done it. And, and just changing a little, just, again, small ways, not huge, but just tweaking in that kind of direction. Yeah,
for sure. And then, on the West Coast realm, that's usually, for us, we don't have a Pilsner silo, so we got to use some bag malt. So typically we're still running 50 to 60% of that just as Pilsner, and the rest is our base silo. I think from there, we can build out our cogs a little bit better, and I'd much rather put 11 more pounds of hop in it instead of having 100% Pilsner malt base on it. So I think for those, definitely looking for that nice, smooth hop saturation with, like you said, a little bit more sulfur, thiol-driven varieties to kind of add this more, tropical citrus, but still, layering in some of that, I think, dank and some pine resin in there to, I think, help balance it out where it just is not this fruit cocktail.
Yeah. You are wearing a Dank Dive t-shirt right now. Right. So, we know where your loyalties lie. But in that sense, maybe we should talk about fermentation for a minute, but then, come back. I want to talk a little bit about hops and, and how some of that different hop selection plays into it. Is yours ale fermentation? And it's crazy that I have to ask that question these days, since so much, West Coast IPA is now lager fermentation.
Yeah, I would say 95% of them are ale driven. I think we have a beer in the tank called IS Diego that's using 3470, but I'd say 95% is flagship Chico yeast. But we like to have fun and try some different flavor profiles. We definitely see, some of these more sulfur-driven hops and some New Zealand stuff. We kind of like throwing in that 3470, a little warmer temperature, just to help diversify the lineup as well. Just kind of not having the same old thing kind of roll through and something fun and different. And we just, I guess, haven't really taken a deep dive into really like utilizing that strain more and more, but use it just as a fun one-off.
So that's fun. If you're using a more sulfur driving hop, you'll use a more sulfur producing yeast also to really lean into more of that kind of sulfur character.
Correct. Yeah, and we'll ferment it at a warmer temperature and let that kind of run off
Sure.
and burp out. But that's just where we currently kind of been utilizing some of that yeast strain with a lot of these more New Zealand West Coast IPAs or whatever you want to call it.
Sure. And then, as you get into double IPA, how's that change for you? And I should say this, like double IPA as a category, it is really fun to win something like Alpha King. Not a beer that you're going to sell a lot of, generally speaking, because the market for double West Coast IPA is still, it's modest at best these days. And so like finding, figuring out how to make something that's also, that's something that your audience wants to buy, but that can also win competitions. That's a fun challenge in and of itself. As you then scale it up into that kind of double realm, what changes?
Yeah, actually, the one that we won, Alpha King, was the first one we actually used 3470 on.
Oh, really? Okay.
We always were classic on the ale realm, and just each time we're kind of drinking them, I think once loved where that sweetness kind of layered in with the ethanol sweetness, but we kind of started realizing like, I think it just came across a little bit too long in the tooth, and I'm like, hey, let's drop the ABV down on these beers a little bit. Let's layer in some 3470, dry it out a little bit more, and I think that really helped with the overall balance and drinkability with not having that sweet fusel alcohol like holding the palate too much, and it really helped those hops saturation and have it really pop out of the glass, and hence why it landed.
Interesting. So you made an exception on your fermentation approach for your Alpha King beer. All right.
Yeah, and I'd say kind of moving forward with double IPAs, like we really liked how that yeast presented in those in that style as well. Just I thought, I think the esters and with the sweet ethanol, just it's not a bad thing, but just each time you're like, it's just a little sweet, and we keep on trying these beers out. It's like still a little sweet, and it's like we keep on drying them out, and it's like, well, let's just try to rethink this and drop the ABV a little bit and help that ethanol sweetness out, and then kind of
keep those esters under control and let them not heighten that feeling of heft in the body or that sweetness, because whether it was there or not, they definitely amplify that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Interesting. Any what else did you change for that that double version with Alpha King?
Yeah, so how we kind of build out double IPAs, it's all about, I think, balance in different hop products and downstream products. So a lot of Mosaic CO2 extracts up front, a nice charge of Helios.
Why Mosaic up front?
I think we like the resinous quality that CO2 extract brings, and like the mouthfeel, still adding.
And CO2 extract. So you're talking about old school extract, Mosaic extract.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We still utilize a decent amount of CO2 extract in a lot of our West Coast and American IPAs. And then, we layered in some Mosaic Cryo, some Strata, and then some Mosaic Dynaboost in the Whirlpool. And kind of just really trying to build it out. I think for us as well, to help cut through that sweetness, we want to try to keep those BUs up as well, to make that finish kind of nice, not too bitter, but bitter enough to really help balance the beer out. And we see a decent charge in kind of mid to end of hot side boil to kind of help get those BUs in there, where it's kind of challenging to force those BUs in. And sometimes you're like, man, we put a ton of hops in this, and it's like still not bitter enough. So
tell me about that. A charge just before the end, but not you're not just launching bitterness and then whirlpooling. There is something in the middle there.
Yeah, so we'll layer in usually a CO2 extract either at the beginning or middle. Depending on how much CO2 extracts we're putting in there, we'll do some in the middle at the end. And then we'll do
you kind of pace it out through okay.
Yeah, pace it out.
Wow.
And then, I think we want to allow, to keep the BUs down, but we really like the mouthfeel and the saturation that those CO2 extracts bring, but also not boiling them too long as well. I still feel like we get a decent amount of that aromatic hot side kind of intensity out of those products. And then from there, usually around 15 minutes, give or take, we'll kind of do a medium charge of T90 or cryo, depending on what products we're using, to really hopefully drive in that kind of quarter-ish IBUs out of that beer. I think that kind of late kettle hop really helps bring enough of that bitterness in there to really help balance the beer out, but not having that bitterness linger and sit on the palate too long. I think it's just a nice smooth bitterness with allowing still some of that aromatic to kind of hold through.
Is there something to the fact that you're using green hop product then at that point in terms of the quality of the flavor, or is that just because that's what you have?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, we even go select bittering hops. I mean, I think it's from the very beginning to the very end.
Bittering hops.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
All
I
right.
think we definitely always believe in kind of, every addition counts. And what is that? What's the oil content? What's the spread of the oils? What is that product like? What variety is it? And we still do believe the small intangible amount of 3 pounds at the beginning is going to change. And is it Apollo? Is it Summits? Is it Helioses? Is it CO2 extracts? Are we doing first wort? I think we really try to look at what the end result is and what beer we're trying to produce, and how we build that beer is slightly different each time of what we're trying to accomplish.
So I'm curious about that, like keeping track of all of that information and pulling apart some of these variables becomes its own challenge. Understanding what those things are actually doing and the real effect that they have. It's very hard in this kind of environment to have a one-to-one comparison. And so what does that evaluative process then look like?
Yeah, I mean, luckily the blessing and the curse of how many kettle turns and tank turns that we do. We'll do a lot of that R&D research with Fish Mosquito or our new Stomp West Coast IPA or our Ripon Pale Ale, and from there it's like, hey, we're kind of thinking about maybe swapping this product
you're
out.
going to blend enough of it back in where, if something is a little bit different and you don't love it, it's not a failure. You can correct for it.
100%. And then from there, if it's a small tweak, we'll let that run all the way through production and put it on panel blind. And it's like, hey, we got this GMA changed from whatever Helios to Eureka to Mosaic or whatever it might be. And it's like, I want 6 of the freshest Ripons around this time and do 100% blind, and let's see if anybody can pick it up. And we've got a very talented crew here that a handful of times we can kind of maybe not know exactly why it's different, but we'd be like, it's like, do you like it better? Why? What's different about it? And our crew's very honed in on that we can a handful of times really pick up on some of these nuanced differences, and then we can kind of run with that information with some of these new, either changing our core products or understanding how to utilize that information to manipulate kind of new or kind of one-off batches.
What have you learned from some of those in terms of, again, like even quality of bitterness? You're making clear decisions here in order to accomplish some goals, for specific creative reasons. What are some of the kind of unconventional things you found through that testing process?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really what are we trying to accomplish with that product? Do we just need a clean bitterness? Do we want to have some of that nuance, flavor and intensity and varietal nuances of those products? And I think like I said, it kind of all boils down to what are we trying to accomplish? Do we want to get some more hop intensity? Do we want some more pine? Do we want some more blueberry? Do we just need a clean bitterness? And I think it just kind of depends on what we're trying to accomplish. And from there, like if it's impactful enough to use some of these maybe higher end, higher priced extracts or flowables or whatever it might be, in the end all, it's like, how can we improve or outsmart or can we somehow absorb this higher cost? And usually there's some small tweaks along the way where it's like, hey, we're about to do a rebrand. Let's not make a 6%. Let's make it 5.8, and let's make this a little bit more sessionable, and then we can add some more hop intensity into that product, and kind of trying to outsmart what we're trying to accomplish to hopefully, as us, continue trying to drive and produce the best quality beer that we want.
What's your blueberry Mosaic unlock? What's your secret? Because on last week's episode, we got Jake Watt at Trapdoor's his Mosaic blueberry unlock secret. I'm curious what yours is.
Yeah, I mean, we bounced around a little bit as well. I think the current one's in there is Lakefront, if I recall. Yeah, I think that's kind of just working on with our hop suppliers and kind of getting some rubs out and getting some spider grafts. And from there, we're definitely not honed in on, we enjoy farm specific, but we can kind of see that kind of change overall where, a year before the blueberry intensity was just punchy in Idaho varieties. And for some reason this year, maybe not as much, or what we got in front of us and kind of looking on, okay, what's an Oregon grown? Where's the terroir? And so I'd say we don't have like an exact kind of lot that we always kind of select, but we kind of through trial and error, we can kind of find what we're trying to accomplish.
Jake's secret is Riwaka, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Like using small amount of Riwaka that helps bring out some of that Mosaic blueberry character. And, so anyway, just, I'm sharing that with you now before anyone else hears that episode.
All right. I wrote that down.
But then, using this CO2 extract at various times through the hot side is also interesting to me, so you clearly have some different, you've defined how that longer contact with heat does affect even this extracted hop on the hot side there, to where you might find some benefit to staging that out rather than dumping it all in at first, or dumping it all in at 10 minutes to go or something along those lines, or just not doing anything on the hot side and only whirlpooling in with some of this stuff, which all of those would be viable strategies, but clearly you are using a more complex strategy to achieve, because you are finding layers that are built through more of that heat contact.
100%. Yeah. I mean, through, like you said, the research with Rippon's kind of a prime example where, we do one can at 60 minutes and one can at 30 minutes of the CO2 Mosaic. And depending on what our crop year alpha acids come in with that beer and how we manipulate it, sometimes we have to drop that can down. I think it was this year we had to drop that first initial 60-minute charge down to 45 minutes to keep that the bitterness and the balance out of the beer without bringing out more of the hot side hops. We want to continue hopefully not removing hops, and we always want to hopefully just add some hops to our products. And we definitely saw a slight kind of change in that beer. We actually got a little bit more, that residual intensity kind of stuck around a bit longer on that beer than versus that extra 15 minutes where it kind of cooked off a little bit more. And you're talking such nuanced kind of differences, but like you said, with enough tanks that we flip, it's with Ripon or Vish Mosquito, there's 3 to 4 different batches in a week. So he kind of, in a 3-week window, can do a lot of different things in that time to really see like what is the impact and how can we manipulate it.
These days, you're not winning the race by miles. You're winning the race by inches and maybe a foot or two if you're really, really lucky. And so it's some of these small things that do tend to make quite a bit big difference in there. So, with so much on this kind of modern West Coast style going into almost like pure whirlpool, how do you then think about that whirlpool edition, in terms of time and heat, and everything else, and what that then contributes to this hop picture?
Yeah, exactly. Us being in the high desert down here, will boil around 204 degrees. So we don't cold pool any of our beers. They'll come into that whirlpool usually high 180s. So still not
without even having to knock them down. They just naturally cool themselves down that quickly. Yeah.
So we've trialed out a little bit of cool pooling. We have space to kind of put a little exchange in from the kettle to whirlpool, but where we're at, it's like we're not maybe as cool as some, but we're definitely cooler than a lot. And just like the I think the luck of kind of our geographic location can kind of come in on that slightly lower end in the whirlpool. And from there, same thing, we kind of can stagger out usually some additions as well. And depending on the beer, every once in a while, we'll do kind of like a cold water back to kind of bring it down a little bit more. But same thing, just kind of depends on what we're trying to accomplish with that given beer.
Do you have a hop format or some specific hops that you find work better in that lower heat contact, kind of time and format versus, say your, CO2 extract on the hot side and obviously the, T90s and cryo hops at the 15 minutes at times?
Yeah, I mean, Simcoe we've seen kind of definitely lends itself to maybe a little bit of that more cooler pooling, especially the varieties we bringing in, kind of more of that stone fruit, peach rings kind of characteristics. And just like a lot of people, we kind of layer in a lot of Citra Mosaic hot side as well. I think just really great building block. But on the cold pool versus hot, we haven't kind of dove super deep into kind of the nuanced differences on varietal and how to really dial that in.
All right. Well, I want to talk about dry hopping next because obviously that's that's another big piece of this. Before we do, Brees Malting has been supplying craft brewers with the highest quality base and specialty malts since the early 1980s. As Brees celebrates their 150th anniversary this year, they're proud to remain a fifth-generation family-owned company. They love to support the creativity and passion in craft brewing that results in amazing beers. All Brees malts are made in America, so you can count on a reliable supply chain. Barley is sourced from 300 growers in the Bighorn Basin of Wyoming and Montana, plus technical support is available through their Center of Malting Excellence. With 150 years of malting experience, check out why so many craft brewers trust Brees for their specialty malt at brewingwithbrees.com. Also, this episode is brought to you by Yeast Laboratories. If you've brewed with Yeast's 1056 American Ale, you've brewed with the strain that helped build craft beer from the ground up. 4 decades later, it's still one of the most used strains in the country, delivering the same quality and consistency. These legendary liquid yeast providers are celebrating their 40th anniversary alongside America's 250th this 4th of July, and as part of the celebration, they're offering 10% off every order of 1056 American Ale scheduled by July 31st and shipped by August 30th. Already have an order in that window? Don't worry, your discount will be automatically applied. Here's to 40 years of living culture and best in craft liquid yeast. Check out the anniversary at yeastlab.com. So let's talk about dry hopping. And I swear we're going to talk about some other beers that are not IPAs here, Patrick. We're going to get to them. I'm not going to let you off the hook without talking about those. But let's talk about your approach to dry hopping on IPA in general, and then maybe some specific lanes that it then starts following depending on the style of IPA or the overall flavor goal.
Yeah, I mean, so we're kind of depending on what products and varieties that we're using, somewhere on that, 2.5 on the very low end, kind of 4.5 pounds per barrel on the kind of very high end. I think, like I said, kind of depends on the punchiness and the intensity of those varietals that we're using and how much impact we feel like we're going to get out of those products. So we're kind of somewhat classical with it. We'll ferment at 68, let it free rise to 71. We'll run a forced diacetyl test on it at the end of fermentation. We'll drop it down to 60 degrees. Harvest, drop the yeast, and then do our dry hop 1. And then the next day...
still at 60 degrees?
Still at 60.
Okay.
And then dry hop 2, usually we'll do a 2-day dry hop. We'll add the second charge, still at 60 degrees, let that hold for 48 hours, give or take.
Pulling any off the bottom as they settle? No.
Nope. We'll rouse throughout. So we'll rouse on day 1 up to 5 PSI, just kind of mix them up and get a little bit of head pressure. Then we'll blow down the tank, dump in the second charge, and then we'll rouse up to about 10 PSI. And then from there, we'll just let it sit. We've looked at. We've had kind of
still sitting at 10 psi.
Still setting at 10 psi.
All right.
So at the 60
You're
degrees.
a team cap, my friend.
Yes. So we're a team cap. I think at that temperature with our yeast strain, we'll add some ALDC each charge and kind of throughout.
I figure you had to at that point.
Yeah. And we don't really see much creep or pressure. A little bit here or there. We'll kind of check some gravity again, but we get really minimal re-fermentation on these beers. I think it's kind of due to that 60 degree, a little bit cooler, keep it a little bit at bay. But we'll kind of just run. And
what do you find about 60 degrees that's compelling? Obviously that's a little lower than, a number of brewers. It's not into that like really cold territory where you're just going to get grassy flavored hops that, that nobody likes. But that definitely is it's creeping into inefficient land.
Yes. I think internally what we see is I think since everything comes out of this brewery, trying to keep our production as streamlined as we can. So like I said, with that lower temperature, kind of the less, I think, potential for some creep and re-fermentation, and also just our harvestability on our yeast strains as well. With being able to do that temperature drop on it, we can really make sure we can kind of grab as much yeast out of that tank and get that yeast out of there to be able to reuse with so many turns that we have. And some of them, we'll do a fermentation dry hop on so we can't harvest. So it's kind of more, I guess, an efficiency kind of reason, and it works. So we kind of just stuck with it, but we're continue kind of looking at kind of different models, and so far we've enjoyed kind of different results with kind of manipulating it, but we still kind of enjoy kind of where the products are coming out. So kind of trying to make sure we keep production kind of moving forward and hopefully reduce as much, I guess, or keep as much power as we can, and hopefully, make this yeast do what we want to, I guess, and not have to let it run us.
Sure. Does that strategy change at all? Given if you step it up to double IPA, or does the dry hop approach change at all?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's each different beer is its own, so maybe we'll only drop it to 65, or we'll ferment a little bit cooler and let it kind of free rise only to 68. But since we're not really obviously worried about harvesting the yeast off those products, then we will maybe not drop the temperature down as much to that 60 degree, but we'll still run pretty cool on all these beers. I think with maybe losing some of like the extract with the lower temperature, I still feel like we just like the control a little bit more with that lower temperature to not let that beer, I think, run as much as it might want to.
And there's no, downstream issues, because I mean, the hop creep in the tank is manageable. Hop creep in packaged beer is not manageable. And so you don't see issues come out later. These beers are pretty dry, to start with.
Yeah. So, I mean, in panel wise, we'll continue, each, couple times a week as well, kind of making sure we're popping core cans, tasting them through, and just like everybody, you might get a spike here or there on a product and like, dang. And then, from there, I think if we ever see anything that's consistent, we'll kind of rethink, what's our ALDC, and obviously for some reason our working with our yeast supplier, or if it just if it consistently becomes a spike, then we'll obviously rethink it. But so far, with running through panel, we've not seen very, very minimal, and from there it kind of happens.
Sure. Well, if it ain't broke. Do you make dry hop choices in a different way than you make hot side hop choices, given the different kind of contact experience that it has? Are there certain hops that you really only push through the dry hop there for your IPAs?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we'll kind of look at survivabilities on the charts and kind of seeing like, where's it land on the chart? Okay, if we put it hot side, what's the impact? And that doesn't really dictate our decision 100% of the time, but definitely steers us a little bit of the direction. And from there, it's really, what nuance differences, how complex is that product? And usually just the more complexity into it, we kind of put it in dry hop. And then from there, okay, what's the oil composition? Maybe it's like, hey, this should lean to a super great fermentation dry hop variety as well. So I think looking at overall oil breakdowns, the composition, and then slightly looking at survivability charts to somewhat dictate kind of where we might push some of these products. But definitely the most complexity ones we usually kind of keep on that dry hop, other than a handful of varieties we kind of see needs to be cooked off a little bit in that whirlpool to really, I think, balance it out. Idaho 7's kind of one we've really kind of seen, kind of brings out more of that tropical fruit, and we don't get quite as much of that black tea kind of characteristic is in the dry hop.
Sure. Now you've mentioned oil components a couple of times so far. As you are reading a hop spec sheet, are there some specific oils that you are looking for? Because I had some really good conversations with brewers out in Nebraska actually a few months ago, talking about understanding the oils that do matter and the oils that don't really matter. And talked with Tom Schellhammer a while back about that. You look at total oil content, and if your total oil content is driven by myrcene, that doesn't count.
Yeah.
And for you, as you are evaluating, looking at some of the kind of oil fractions in some of these varieties and some of the lots that that you're evaluating, how much, how do you balance, between the kind of sensory impact of the rub and the, oil content on those spec sheets, and working between these things to make some of those hop selections?
Yeah, I think it's just trying to get as much of an educated guess, especially with some of these new varieties as well. I think like you said, it's a snapshot into what it might do. Get a core sample versus a freshly pelletized T90 versus make it into a tea, and then look at what the spider graph is, and then what's the end beer product spider graph, and then what is the oil content. So I think trying to utilize all the tools that we have and trying to make as best educated guess that we think this end result product or what that flavor profile might be like. And then from there, kind of seeing how can we, between hot side or fermentation or dry hop, where do we think all that would fit best with what are the other kids in the pool or in the fermentation or in the fermenter?
Interesting. So, I want to put a bow on our IPA conversation, but maybe I just want to, kind of zoom out on that before we talk about some other beers, and ask, what do you feel is driving some of your success in the competition space in hoppy beer, something like Alpha King, some of the medals that you won, some of the high scores that you've earned from our judges? What do you think, and with every beer, it's not just the big swings. It's always the, 100 little things that all contribute to making, a big difference there. For you all, what do you think are some of the key differentiators that help maintain this kind of consistently high quality and winning nature to a lot of your hobby beers?
I think the biggest thing is the humbleness and looking at all of our colleagues and friends, and I'll be the first one sitting on the panel and have, whatever one of our Oregon or California or Colorado or whoever it might be kind of sitting there. I'm like, damn, this is a really, really good beer. And it's kind of put it next to kind of some of ours that are out there and kind of see how they stack up. And I think having an understanding, sometimes you're not going to hit a home run and other people are, and really looking at inspiration from all those individuals as well. I'd say we're kind of definitely more slower to evolve than maybe some of these other breweries out there, but always just looking for inspiration through them and kind of seeing our beer's hitting the mark? Are we kind of getting lost a little bit in the shuffle? And if we are, then be the first ones to be like, okay, let's go to the drawing board and get our great crew to kind of sit down and kind of pick all their brains of, hey, what we're doing, maybe we want to change, and how do we want to manipulate that? And all these kind of, everybody has their own little technique and stuff, and kind of just taking little snidbits of information from all of them and really just drawing inspiration from them and there's a lot of fantastic beer out there these days, and just trying to kind of stay, I think, up with some of those players as well, but still kind of stick to our core roots with kind of still producing maybe some of these American IPAs and stuff that are great Pacific Northwest palates and Oregonians love as well. So.
When you package your competition beers, the ones you send to us tend to be packaged in 500 milliliter bottles. Yeah, is this you have a consistent kind of competition packaging approach there that gives you low oxygen and kind of ideal conditions?
Yeah, so we'll package straight off the bright tank. Usually we'll pull a couple kegs off to kind of clear out whatever's in the arm and stuff. And we were running hand bottling off a keg, but it's like, well, it's just one more step that we're going to introduce some oxygen. So what we've been doing for the last handful of years as well is grab some kegs off the tank, clear it through, get it nice, and then once that arm's nice and packed with we feel like the best quality product in it, then we'll just hand bottle off the tank
Straight
itself.
Off the bright.
Yep.
All right.
So I think we've definitely
Perch
seen
bottles, cap on foam, all of the techniques.
Yep, just the old school kind of three-way homebrew, gun and purge the crap out of them and cap on foam. And
that Blakeman beer gun can produce some really good numbers off of these things.
Yes, yeah. So I think any little chance, little one up or definitely an auction just murders those beers. So so we kind of moved into that just straight off the bright. Like let's just keep it low as possible, and hopefully we pick the right layer of stratification out of that tank that produces an award-winning beer.
Interesting. Well, let's talk about barrel aged beer for a minute, and I only want to do this because your barley wine last year scored a 100 with Craft Beer and Brewing, and that is an unusual score. We rarely have more than 3 or 4 in a year, and even 3 and 4. Some years there's none. That pull in a score of 100. And as I went back and tasted that beer after our judges scored it, I was really struck by how counter hype trend it is, and that if you look at the kind of hype side of barrel aged barley wine and barrel aged stout, you don't find hops in it. That they're all going to be marketed as English style and low hopped. And yours has clear hop character and presence in it that it didn't shy away from, and yet it found a way to sculpt that hop character in a way that that supported and helped, and that felt rounded and integrated and cohesive. It wasn't a distraction. It didn't feel like another thing stuck on top of these flavors. It felt like it worked right in there, but definitely made it feel unique and and somewhat singular in the context of that. Talk to me about the kind of creative impulse behind that.
I mean, like I said, just drawing inspiration from other breweries, and I mean, this is just the straight up rip off, kind of like our classic, what everybody kind of grew up drinking, Bigfoot barley wine, and obviously have our own kind of twist to it, but that's something like, oh man, like I remember doing verticals of that for year over year and having bottle shares, and I mean that beer is it's drastically different from day one than X years down the road as well. So I think we all loved that beer kind of growing up and still love it as well. And I think it was that American barley wine kind of style that we really honed in on, that we're kind of a hop forward brewery, and it's like, well, I love the English styles, but let's make a hoppy barley wine. And like you said, kind of not a ton of people are doing kind of that style these days. Let's how can we load this thing up with, like I said, a bunch of Centennial that hopefully can have some nice survivability.
Centennial, huh?
Yep, and hold through that whole process. And I mean, even after, it's been, I don't know, a bottle coming on, not a year, 8 months or so, and it's still pretty hoppy.
Yeah.
So I think drawing, like I said, that creative inspiration from what we all loved, from the OG barley wine, Bigfoot boys, and I think just trying to make our version of that, and like you said, not seeing a ton of those kind of styles out there these days. So something just kind of different than everybody else.
So how did you kind of smooth that edge then? Because I'm just curious about that. Like normally, if you told me that, I'd be like, it would taste like, Centennial is grafted onto this barley wine, and that, it becomes its own character that sits apart from the beer. And yet this just felt like it rolls in and is just subtly tucked into the beer flavor. Is there a way that you add that? Is this, earlier hot side addition in this, or tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think this one, without the recipe straight in front of me, I mean, I think it was a pretty layered approach like a lot of our beers, but just doesn't have as much, I think, of different products in it with the CO2. So, we love our estate-grown Centennial from Crosby. And from there, I think it was like a 45-minute edition, 15-minute edition, and then kind of slightly larger, like 0-minute Whirlpool Start kind of edition as well. And it's still pretty, I think that, were we like, I don't even think we were, I think we were only like 1.5 pounds per barrel hot side with 0 dry hop on it. And it definitely held up like surprisingly well when big beer like that hop saturation intensity kind of stood out as much as we've seen. And it's been a handful of years we made it, and it's still kind of when I write it on paper, I'm like, really, that's all that we put in that beer? Like, gosh, that seems like half of what I thought we would put in there.
Sure.
And it just, it holds through, and that terroir grown that we select for Vicious Mosquito, definitely has that, nice whatever torch brulee kind of grapefruit peel,
right?
And with that nice kind of floral kind of balance and complexity into it. So I think overall layering it in with the nuance, I think complexity and layers of that Centennial lot that we pull in, I think really kind of why that beer has a nice balance and layer effects all the way through.
Tell me about your barreling process, and was there any, I mean, naturally I'm just, the barrel aging process introduces oxygen into beer. Typically speaking, the barrel is a great environment for micro oxidation, and that it happens very slowly, very subtly. But then, over time, like some of these barrels, you sit long enough, they develop a fair amount of oxygen sitting at the top of that barrel. And in something with this kind of level of hops, that could go weirdly south. Was there anything to your process around that that helped control for that? Or, are you topping up barrels? Are you purging anything? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so we kind of have a standard SOP with all of our barrel aging. I think the biggest thing, we'll pull nails on our barrels, maybe not every single kind of barrel part of that batch, but a handful every probably about 2-3 months to really kind of see if there's any, where the oxidation level's at. Usually what is that like kind of fusel splinters intensity that starts to kind of drop out and then balance off. So we'll be pulling nails a decent amount, kind of just seeing what the beer is doing and what the life's like. But then going into the barrel, standard fermentation, kind of getting the yeast out, we'll crash the tank, add some fining into it to get as much yeast out before going to that barrel and get it as bright as possible. And then from there, we'll purge the crap out of the barrel. We'll get usually from our brokers 0 rinse, freshly dumped barrels that are usually, gets with us from dump for in under a week as well. So we like them dripping wet and super, super saturated with all that stuff. So we'll purge it, and then from there, fill and purge during the same time, and then try the same thing, bung, or we'll have a little airlock breather on it for a little bit. So we'll kind of airlock on foam, and then allowing, with it coming in about 30, 32, 34, whatever it might be, allowing that to expand in that barrel for a couple days to really make sure we try to pack that barrel as tight as possible with all that beer. And then we'll kind of then put on a breather bung and file it away. But I think from there, same thing, we like the slow oxidation process of the barrel. So trying to get that as minimal to zero, as minimal oxidation, O2 pickup during that barreling process. And that's kind of just been our SOP and kind of stuck with that as well.
Well, it's working.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff. And, a different take on barrel-aged barley wine for sure. And I should also note that the last 2 years that you've sent That beer is scored a 97 and then a 100. So it is not just great last year. It's been consistently great as you've sent it to us. And, so cool stuff there. We've got a beer coming up in the lager issue that has, and all of our scores are locked. And so I can talk about it now, even though it hasn't been published at the time that we're recording this. And I haven't even told you what the score is. But you made this rice lager called Sounds Like Summer. And I wrote a review of it a couple of nights ago and immediately, sent a Slack message to Paul, our review coordinator. And this is one of my favorite beers that I've had this year. It was so stunningly beautiful, like basil, cucumber. It was fresh, but it also didn't feel heavy-handed. Talk to me about, designing this. And this is a tough category because I think, with rice lager, sometimes the inclination is to go a little bit overboard on, on some of these fresh flavors. But this felt like it was mildly cocktail inspired in some ways, but also in a typical Sunriver format, restrained and refined. And, and so it never felt like it was trying to do more than it should do. Tell me about the design process around this, and then, some of the decisions you made through brewing it.
Yeah, brewing beers like this dates way back to my Free State days. Jeff Deeman, the director of brewing ops there, but at the time the head brewer, loved kind of these cocktail-inspired kind of beers and these urban spice and these field beers and, what we call the garden party there as well. So the inspiration kind of came way back from my days back there. And they're just so refreshing, and it's like the flavor impact you can get out of some of these products that you wouldn't think you'd be able to get saturated in a beer, or it might turn kind of weird vegetal and not as bright and refreshing. So really kind of honed in some of that skill set back in those earlier days. And then from there, we've been producing this beer on and off, in the summer times. And I just love basil, love cucumber beers. And then luckily from there, I kind of honed in on our SOP and how much we're adding and trying to get a nuance like, chewing on that basil. Okay, is it more peppery? Is it a little bit more herbaceous? Like what's the intensity like? And kind of have hopefully from as much remembering what that product was like the year before, what the impact that this current lot that we have coming in as well, how to balance it through. So I'm definitely a big component with all these beers, always cold side additions.
Yeah.
So we'll kind of in-house. So this was Japanese cucumber. We were trying to get some Lao basil, some lemon basil, but it's always kind of hard to pick and stuff, and get selection during the availability of it. A little bit of ginger, and then that yuzu was a new one. Mason Klaus, one of our lead brewers, I'm like, it needs a little something else. We can up some ginger, but the mouthfeel and that peppery bitterness, I think is going to kind of take off that balanced smoothness of the rice lager as well. And he kind of came to mind, where yuzu is super hot these days. I'm like, oh, that's perfect. Yes. Yeah. Let's put some yuzu and kind of add some different fun components, where each year we kind of put something else in there to make it slightly different than year over year, and just have some fun with it, really.
Tell me about the design. Are you making some of these ingredient decisions with the beer in tank? Are you doing this through bench sampling with a fermented beer before you then add some of these ingredients, for conditioning in a bright tank? Talk to me about that process.
Yeah. So, with a beer like this, we bench test with a little bit of yuzu, since that was the new product or the new ingredient that we're going to be adding. But a lot of the other ones that were in there, we kind of knew what was going to happen with those products. So from there, it wasn't bench test. But when we're building beers out like this with a lot of these kind of herbs or spices or fruits, we'll definitely bench test and kind of see, hey, do we have something? Is the beer in the and conditioning, can we use that, or is there a similar beer that we have as a core lineup? And typically we have a pretty broad lineup at our pub, so usually there's some beer that's finished and packaged that we can kind of spike, do a little bench test with. So it really kind of depends on think what the product is. Am I familiar enough with it to not bench test it? If it's not, then we do a drastic amount of bench testing, especially with our barrel age program with a lot of like the new flavors and one-off kind of, we don't quite go full pastry, but kind of this tweener between flavored stout and pastry stout.
You mentioned using Japanese cucumber in this. Talk to me about why Japanese cucumber, and then, it's not like I can, go to my, puree provider and order Japanese cucumber puree to go add to this. So talk to me about how you process, some of this for addition.
Yeah, so same thing with these beers.
Making it hard on yourself again, obviously, with some of these ingredient choices.
It is, but I think it's the fun with it. I think we're making something that's going to have this fresh flavor kind of impact. You don't go to your fancy cocktail lounge and they're grabbing a perfect puree kind of jug and kind of pouring you a blood orange mojito or what might not be. Now they're sitting there muddling a fresh blood orange and probably lighting the garnish on fire and doing other fun stuff as well. So yeah, I think it's just kind of fresh ingredients as much as possible. Obviously, if it's like a super large scale, how can we balance out kind of super fresh with kind of getting some of these already kind of processed ingredients? But the Japanese cucumber, I think, I love them. Very minimal seeds in there. That big melon ball, what's the little Chinese rock candy you always get at the little melon candy? It just adds this confectioner kind of melon ball kind of component in the beer where, it's kind of surprising, especially some of your guys here. It's like, how did this cucumber go from this and have this flavor and aroma on it?
Because normal cucumber is so adjacent to watermelon, and and I often find brewers use them and need to use them together because it's one way to make watermelon taste more like watermelon. In this case, so it doesn't surprise me that you're getting melon character, obviously a little different melon character out of this. Yeah.
So from there, we'll bring in. So we'll peel it. I'll de-seed it and then chop it up, puree it, and then usually we'll do a little citric acid, kind of soak on all those products to kind of bring that pH down to hopefully, reduce as much kind of microbial kind of pickup that we potentially have. Doesn't quite solve exactly, but nudges it and kind of helps brighten up the beer as well. So it depends on what the final pH we're trying to produce. So this one, I think we dropped to like, it was right around, I think, 4 or 4.1, so not super low, but enough to add some nice tanginess to that end product and help kind of accent and bring out that yuzu and a little help kind of cut through some of that confectioner melon ball sweetness as well.
Yeah, well, I could talk to you about how you construct the base beer, but we've been talking for a long time now, and and so maybe we zoom out. You've been here for a decade plus. You've seen the brewery through a number of different eras. You made it through COVID, and you've gone from a little over 2,000 barrels now to a little under 13,000 barrels. It's a heady period of growth, and obviously we've put you guys on in the brewing industry guide. What you're doing is making waves out there. You're winning medals, you're winning awards, you're winning Alpha King, you're winning top scores in craft beer and brewing. What do you hope for the next 5 or 10 years? Where do you see Sunriver going in the near term and then the longer term future?
I think it's just, continue kind of like the new growth is maintained. And I think biggest thing what we're looking for is to continue producing these high quality products and beverages. But also I think continuing to evolve and adapt. And I think I'm super excited about kind of what the future of some of our limited release program, a lot of these specialty one-off IPAs. I think we're going to take a larger deep dive into those products in 2027. And we do see, still kind of holding our production volumes with our core beers, but I really think some of these kind of limited one-off IPAs that we get in Oregon decent amount saturated, I think we can see some opportunity to continue, I think, improving and advancing on that lineup and continue adding some new fun products along the way.
Well, there you go. If you can win the competitions, can you win some of those tap handles at specialty beer bars in this category too? Because you're some serious competitors, aren't you?
Oh yes.
Well, anyway, I think that's a great place to bring it to a close. G&D's Elite 290 Micro Series is built for brewers who care about sustainability and performance. Berkeley Yeast's FRESH Chico is now available dry. PacTex handles are made from 100% recycled plastic and are fully recyclable. Indie Hop's Lorient has found its way into the hearts of lager lovers across the country. The Midea 50/50 Flex can convert you all fridge, all freezer, or half and half with just the touch of a button. Check out why so many craft brewers trust Brews for their specialty malt, and celebrate Y Yeast's 40th anniversary with 10% off every order of 1056 American Ale placed by July 31st. If you've enjoyed this episode, go to beerandbrewing.com, click on that subscribe button, become a subscriber to Craft Beer and Brewing. And if you're a brewer, a professional brewer out there that's listening, check out that all-access subscription that lets you send a dozen beers per year our way for consideration and potential scoring for Craft Beer and Brewing magazine, all included with that little subscription price. That subscription price, it's less than the cost of 2 World Beer Cup or GABF entries. So, and you get all the other nice things that we also provide along with it. Anyway, Patrick, if people want to learn more about Sunriver and the award-winning beers that you make, where can they learn more?
Well, visit our website at www.sunriverbrewingcompany.com. Also, we have 4 public houses, restaurants, one in Oakway Shopping Center in Eugene, one in Redmond over by the airport, one in Bend over by the hospital, and our flagship mothership restaurant down in the Sunriver Village. Additionally, also would love to kind of have you all out here to our brewery tap room as well, and mention my name, and I'd love to show you around.
Good stuff. It's worth the trip. Beautiful place out here. Lots of options for outdoor entertainment and excitement and activity. Mountain biking, river running. I mean, Bend's, oh man, that river and people in the tubes in the river in the summertime, kind of amazing. In the wintertime, obviously, you got Mount Bachelor and all the snow sports and then that you could want out here. And so, it reminds me a little bit of home in Colorado and that proximity to all of these excellent things. But of course, great beer has to come along with that. Anyway, thanks for hosting me out here. It's been great talking with you about brewing.
Yeah,
Cheers.
I really appreciate you coming down and great chatting with you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
This podcast has been brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing magazine for those who love to make and drink great beer. To learn more or to subscribe, visit beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew.